Hello everyone, I am back with another video. Yes, Rusty R.E. Lewis 2011 is back with another video. Now more recently, if you are a longtime subscriber or a more recent subscriber of mine, you'll know that occasionally I'll pop up, throw out a video here, throw out a video there. More recently I had my top 10 games of the last year, but rarely am I coming back and recording videos with anything resembling a consistent frequency or schedule. Well, I'm hoping that this time things are going to be a little bit different with this new video series. And this is actually a project that I had wanted to move forward with when I was streaming on Twitch about a year and a half ago. If you didn't know, around the peak of the pandemic, I think many people were looking for an extra creative outlet, a way to pass the time, if you will, because many of us were quarantined. And I started streaming on Twitch. And one of the projects I wanted to move forward with was also about the same time that I realized I don't really want to stream on Twitch anymore, just because it really wasn't my thing. And I won't really go into the details of that, but the long and short of it was, I never want to approach something, whether it's a podcast episode, whether it's a YouTube video, or it's a Twitch stream, where I'm giving half of myself to that project, right? I always want to come to those creative endeavors with my full self when the creative sparks are flowing, the creative juices are there, and I have the energy and positivity that I feel like I'm kind of known for, right? And so I didn't want to approach those Twitch streams on a schedule that I wasn't willing to commit to until I was ready for it. And so that kind of has long past, and I figured let's continue to move forward with this project, but let's do it on my own schedule. And so that's what I'm doing here with this video series. Now, you may have already heard from the chill music in the background and kind of this more chill demeanor that I'm kind of carrying here with this video series. This isn't meant to be an ASMR type of thing, but it is meant to be very relaxed and chill. So what am I doing? I'm doing something I'm kind of self-describing as rebooting the backlog, which the double click into that, the long and short of it is really updating my game collection using a site called Backloggery.com. This is a site I, come this summer, will have been a member of for 12 years. It's a site I haven't been active on for about 4 though. My last post was in May of 2018, and for those that are not familiar with the site, I'm sure many of you out there might be, Backloggery is basically a way to update and track your game collection. The interesting thing about that, because many of you might be saying, well, Rusty, there's dozens, hundreds of those today. I have one on my iPhone, on my Android device, on my iPad, on whatever mobile device you're carrying around nowadays. And yes, you're not wrong. There are probably many of those video game collection tracking applications out there nowadays. And many of them are fancy. They're pulling from a database. All you have to do is type a couple of letters and you have all of the games in that particular series ready to go. You can drag and drop into this library so you can easily chronicle and showcase your collection, and you can share it with friends, so on and so forth. The interesting thing about Backloggery, and the thing I like about it so much, and liked about it back then and still do to this day, maybe it's more a testament to my personality, but it's all manual. So you're not pulling from a database. So if you are going to enter a couple Kirby games on the Nintendo 3DS to add to your collection, you have to go to this website, find the 3DS, add the game. You have to type in the whole name of the game manually. You can't just type in KIRB and a bunch of Kirby games come up and you just click it and it's all good. It is a very manual effort. Part of me loves that. Maybe it's the IT auditor, accountant background that I have or whatever, but I've always loved that, right? Because if you look back into that, late 2000s, 2007 to 2012 with the MySpace pages and the early Facebook and even old school YouTube, where you really had creative control over what your profile looked like, right? You literally got to control and configure and edit and modify everything from color schemes to pictures to, a whole assortment of things. The music that was playing in the background of your MySpace page back in the day when people would click into it, right? There were so many things that you had kind of creative control over. There's very few sites now that have that because everything's so mechanical, if you will. And I feel like Backloggery is one of those few sites that still gives you kind of the creative control, maybe to a very arbitrary, archaic sense where you have to basically manually input everything, which could be a nightmare for most folks, but it's not for me. So all of that to say, what is this video series going to be? It's going to be me sitting down in this chair in the game room here, updating my Backloggery with my game collection for every console that I own games for. So the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, Nintendo 64, Nintendo GameCube, Wii, and not just home console games. I will also be updating my collection for PlayStation Vita, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Game Boy, Nintendo DS. All of that will be updated, and I'll be separating the videos into each console. Now, with my more extensive libraries of consoles, like the PS1 and 2 in particular, I'll probably be splitting that out into multiple parts. And this is not meant to be like a, Rusty, that just sounds like a glorified pickup video. That's not what it's meant to be. There are definitely going to be games that I'm showcasing and manually entering here with my little keyboard and everything like that on Backloggery here with all of you that I have not played before, and I won't be able to share impressions. But what I hope this series will become is far more conversational, with the chill music and my stories tied and associated to this game library that I've kind of amassed. I'm hoping it's really just a way for others out there to get a better sense of the type of gamer, if you will, that I am, the types of games that click with me. And, I recorded a video. It was really a podcast episode that I recorded on Otaku Brothers, the podcast that I'm a co-host of, that I cut down and ended up putting on YouTube, at least the audio of it, was how my game collecting habits have changed. And so much of that video was talking about the old school days of the YouTube gaming community and how a large part of, my involvement and my exposure to that community and the influence of other people, right, wrong, or indifferent, really caused me to buy anything and everything resembling video games that I came across in the wild. And it also caused me to create an eBay account. And I was buying all these games that had anything that seemed interesting to me, right? And it was around 2017, 2018, kind of coinciding with getting married and, my wife and I just figuring out our life, right? And moving into a place together. And I had this giant collection of games, and it was really kind of a wake-up call for me of like, what do any of these games mean to me? I haven't played 30% of these, and I really have no interest in playing 30% of these ever, And so when I went through that experience, and when I recorded that episode, and a number of really good friends of mine, two of them being TV and Lust, who I think largely inspired that video and discussion topic anyways, and my good friend Blink, or Blinkum, they both commented on that video and had really insightful thoughts around, it was almost like this cycle of the person that was maybe exposed to the YouTube gaming community, right? Where you go through this discovery phase where you're trying to figure out like, what is my gaming palette? Let's expand this a little bit more, right? It's very much like when you were in high school or middle school, maybe going to college, where you were exposed to all kinds of new genres of music. And it wasn't just, there's just rock, there's metal, there's grunge, there's alternative, there's classic, there's so many different forms of rock. There's also so many different forms of RPGs that I never would have known about if it wasn't for the gaming community, YouTube gaming community. And so I went through what Blink described in one of his comments, and he perfectly summarized kind of the experience that I went through, and I think many other people have gone through, is this refinement phase where you figure out the types of games, whether it's series or genres or consoles or just eras of games that really speak to you. And so when I record these videos and I showcase my collection of games for the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, the N64, the Nintendo Wii, the 3DS, the PlayStation Vita, whatever system it is, I hope all of you not just get a better sense of the type of person that I am when it comes to the types of games that I love and play, but more than that, I hope you find it entertaining and I describe the games in a way and I tell stories in a way that maybe it inspires you to not say, oh my gosh, I have to go to eBay right away and clean up on all the games related to this particular developer, and more, wow, I've never heard of this random Tom and Jerry game on the PlayStation 1 that Rusty had a lot of fond memories playing as a kid. Kind of speaks to me. Maybe I should go check it out. And I will tell you, for any longtime fans, I don't have fans, let's be honest. Anyone that's checked into or watched Ari Lewis 2011 videos in the past, whether it's dating back to my earlier 2010 videos or more recently, you will quickly discover that that collection back there is the most Ari Lewis 2011 jank-ass craziness you've ever seen. Trust me. We've got videos coming. You heard it here first, all right? So I hope you all find this to be entertaining because I'm over the moon excited, if you haven't been able to tell, to record these videos. It's something that it was more not a matter of if, but when, and I'm so excited to do it. Now, with all that being said, before I start with any particular console or system and I kickstart this series, I figured what better way to start this debut episode but by going to my Backloggery page, because like I said, you can customize this page with colors and profile pictures and avatars for your whatever your name is, and of course mine's Ari Lewis 2011. And you can also add a bio page, and for each of the games that you add, you can write little reviews for each of the games and all of these different things. So I figured, let's just spend maybe 8 to 10 minutes and go to my page, revisit some of my earlier 2010, 2012, 2014 thoughts about games, what I thought about them, whatever I scribbled on that page. And just be warned, a lot of that stuff I literally have not edited in like 5 to 8 plus years. I'm 28 now. A lot of that was like literally 18, 19, 20-year-old Rusty. So very much in that discovery phase, determining who am I as a gamer, right? We all wrestle with those philosophical discussions at some point in our life, and they're very formative, right? When you play stuff like Kingdom Hearts and Ukulele and Jet Force Gemini and Perfect Dark, it just changes you as a person, all right? And so really, these are just meant to be fun. I hope you find it to be fun, okay? And maybe it'll inspire other people to kickstart cataloging their collection on Backloggery. So I could ramble all day, but hopefully you get a general sense of what this video series is going to be like. Let's take it some time and walk through my Backloggery page, all right? Let's do it. All right, we are back with a little bit of a change of scenery here. We are on the homepage of Backloggery.com. So as I was mentioning, if you want to create a Backloggery account of your own, it's very simple to do. All you have to do is go to the website there, press start to continue. Simple enough. Start tracking, cataloging your collection. Add me, Ari Lewis 2011, as a friend. And the one thing I didn't mention in the first half of this video was how terrific a community the Backloggery people are. So if you want to get a kickstart on some great friends, you can go to my profile. You can add a bunch of people to what we call the multi-tap, which is basically adding people to your friends list. And when you do that, you get to see the updates that they make when they start playing a new game, when they beat a game, when they complete a game, when they add a new game to their collection. It's so much fun. All right, I could go over here, talk about Backloggery all day. I promise I'm not being paid to promote them. Promise you that. But what I'm also not being paid to do is to talk to you about my backlog that I haven't updated in 4 years, and it's going to be a heck of a fun time. All right, so once again, this is the Backloggery page. Once you create your own profile, which you can do by clicking this fun little button over here, you can eventually, once you sign in with your credentials, click the little My Backlog button, all right? Which is my backlog right here. R.A. Lewis, 2011, right up there. You see it. It's true. It is the truth. And you know what? The funny thing about this, and I talked about this earlier in the video, is how you have to manually customize basically everything related to your profile, including the color palettes. And so if you think like very old school, trying to create your own website where you have to like manipulate all of the color palettes based on numbers, the last time I did this, that's how I had to do it, but it was a whole heck of a lot of fun, even if it took some trial and error to figure out the colors that I wanted to basically complement our friends, Vivi and Steiner from Final Fantasy IX. So at around the time I created my Backloggery, maybe a year or two after the fact, I started playing Final Fantasy IX, which was, if I remember correctly, my introduction to the Final Fantasy series. It was shortly after this that I played Final Fantasy 13. Of course, earlier, when I was a young little lad, I had been exposed to stuff like Final Fantasy 7 and stuff like that, but for games that I truly controller my hand, sunk my teeth into, Final Fantasy 9, came home from college, summer of 2012 or 13 or something like that, freshman, sophomore year, going into the next year of college. This game right here was just so special for a multitude of reasons. If you've played the game, you know these two characters in particular. This little friend of mine over here is oh my word. What can you say about Vivi? What can you say about Vivi? So many things. We could be here forever, but we're not going to talk about Vivi all day long. We're going to keep scrolling along to look at R.E. Lewis 2011's status. So a lot of things to keep in mind here. As you're looking at this page, you think, wow, 332 games. That's the total of Rusty's collection. And the way Backloggery is structured is you have each of these games here for all of the different game collections. And then you have little icons here signifying whether the game has been unbeaten, whether it's been beaten, whether you've completed it. And again, there's nuance to what's beat versus completed. I won't go into that today, but just trying to go through all the verbiage here to bring people up to speed that aren't familiar with Backloggery. When you go up here and you want to potentially, add a game, you can add a game, brings up kind of this template. You can fill out the game title, what console it's for, and then you can start filling out those finer details of whether or not you've played the game before, whether you've already beat it, so on and so forth. All right. Over here, you have this fun little profile thingamajig going on. So we have this fun little avatar here. One of my favorite Pokemon of all time is Totodile. Who doesn't love that little blue alligator from Gold and Silver? With this purple little silhouette thing going on behind him. It's kind of psychedelic in a sense. And then you can also, the fun thing you can do as part of Backloggery is add all of your associated gaming accounts. So Steam, 360, PlayStation, Switch, 3DS, all that good stuff. The other really unique thing about Backloggery that I think sets itself far apart from other sites, again, I have a little exposure or experience with other sites where you can catalog your collection, but as you start, manipulating or, adding certain games that you're playing that you've beaten, if you beat like 10 games in a row, you start accumulating these fun little badges over here. And so we're going to find this out for in real time because I don't even know what these two badges signify because I'm so out of season when it comes to Backloggery. So this first one here, Minion of the Backlog. I have 100 plus unfinished games. Not ashamed of it, all right? And then I also have this arrow that says I'm focusing only on one game. So the other cool thing is when, let's say, I add a game like Horizon Forbidden West, a more recent release from Guerrilla on PlayStation 5, add it to my collection. I can go in there, click my PlayStation 5 games, scroll down, find Horizon, because once you add them, it's all alphabetized in these different buttons here. Then I can click in there and say I'm now playing this game, and then it puts it up into this queue over here, and you can add little comments to say like, oh, you know, I've played it for this many hours. Say fun things like Aloy's great, and this sequel so far is hitting the right notes, which it is. All right, no spoilers. Horizon Forbidden West is an absolute jam. Loving it. All right, that's just more the aesthetic stuff that you'll find here in Backloggery. Before we get into the game stuff, which is my bio section, we'll go down to some stuff here. Memory card, another really fun section. So memory card is really, you know, as the name might imply, chronicling or inventorying. You know, it's almost like an audit log, you know, to use some lingo from my profession. When you beat a game, when you add a game to your collection, when you complete it, so on and so forth, in the date you do it. So the whole joke of me coming back and going through this exercise of updating my collection is I didn't want to do it until, one, I was ready. The reason why I largely stopped was because I felt like what better way to stop making updates to my Backloggery account than getting the Platinum Trophy in Ukulele, which, the last time I checked that list, my top 10 games of the last decade, which I built that out about a year and a half ago, Ukulele was up there, all right? Or maybe revisit that in a future YouTube video. But all of that to say, really fun stuff there. So if I click this, the interesting thing is that it also breaks down by year what your stats were. So how many games did you add to your collection? How many games did you beat? How many games did you complete? And then it kind of nets those to say, okay, well, this year, Rusty, you added maybe 16 games more to your collection than you actually beat. And so you can kind of keep yourself honest if you're really trying to better your buying habits and focus on your backlog. They kind of have those fun stats baked into the Backloggery. So really fun stuff there. What's interesting about this is, you know, if you click into my multi-tap and you go way back when, you know, you'll see that I kind of went to a very significant purging phase where back in 2017, as I was saying earlier in the video, you know, I kind of was saying, what games do I still want in my collection? What games do I want to get rid of? And the interesting thing about this is, you know, many of the games that I ended up removing from my collection, I've sometimes kind of gone back and gotten because I'm like, you know, can you really live without BioShock not living on your shelf over there? I mean, come on. I mean, to be fair, I bought it on PlayStation 4, but, you know, it's another case, another thing. But yeah, so the fun thing about this is you can kind of just get a taste for like, wow, what was going on way back then in January of 2017? Music stopped in the video. Had to go back, figure out what's going on. Didn't mean to wake the lurkers. Everyone's like, Rusty, where'd the chill music go? It's back. Everything's going to be okay. I promise you. Promise you. So anyways, the other cool thing about this, again, is just going back and seeing, like, at what point did you remove certain games from your collection? At what point did you add certain games to your collection? And to have all of that kind of archived is just really interesting. You know, here's a really interesting instance of that is, you know, November 24th, 2015, Hot Shots Golf World Invitational. This was the first game I bought for my PS Vita. I think I posted something on my Instagram page at some point, but it's cool to go back and see, like, when did I buy the PS Vita? And the other interesting thing about me is I keep my receipt. So I literally have my GameStop receipt in my PlayStation Vita box. But if I didn't keep that receipt, well, come back to my backlog. When did I get my PlayStation Vita? I can easily see Hot Shots Golf World Invitational, first game I bought for the system, back on November 24th. Gosh, what a great Thanksgiving that must have been, right? So lots of fun, cool things that you can scroll through and check out. I won't go through all of this, but a fun thing to revisit for long-time Backloggery folks for sure. And for new people that end up creating an account. The other interesting thing is your multi-tab. So these are all of your friends. I'm not going to click into this because it'll bring up this very not so pretty graphic of a bunch of names that almost looks like a breakout board. If you've played that classic game where that little board goes across the bottom and you have all these different, you have the ball going down and you're trying to knock out all the different blocks. Yeah, that's kind of what that view looks like. You don't need to see that. But it should be no surprise that a lot of the good people out there getting some Elden Ring. As Blink, my good friend, I mentioned him earlier in the show, earlier in the episode, earlier in the YouTube video, still getting the naming conventions down of things. Elden Ring, cool, new, under the radar, hidden gem that Blink found all on his own. So you also get notifications when your friends add new games. You don't get text messages, nothing like that. It's more whenever you log into your Backloggery account, you kind of just see whoever most recently posted an update. You get to see that, which I think is pretty cool. All right, let's get into the fun stuff. Let's get into stuff that's very specific to me that I had posted many moons ago. Again, this has got to be 8+ years ago that I wrote this stuff. So before I expand this, let's just read what's there. Name Rusty, still true today. Age 28, I'll be 29 in March, okay? Good stuff. Links to some of my content creation spaces, if you will. My favorite game of all time, Kingdom Hearts 1. I don't know if I can definitively say that because I've gone through the exercise of kind of separating the games of my youth in the games of the past 10 to 15 years. Because once you've gotten to, I don't know, a certain age, right? You played so many games and it's so hard to remove the nostalgia glasses and say, how much of this game's influence over me when I was 8 to 10 years old plays a part in climbing to the list versus a game that I played 7 to 8 years ago, like Journey or Dragon Age Inquisition or, The Last of Us might kind of take this number one spot, right? So I've kind of separated at this point my top 10 from my youth and my top 10 from the past decade or so, two lists that I often revisit and I feel like could still use a lot of editing, but we're not going to go there today. I'm just reading the list and trying to provide some context for how I think today. My favorite system of all time, PlayStation 2, still think that holds true. Such an extensive library, so many genres, really well represented, and also a console that I still feel like I'm finding new games and discovering really great titles that speak to me. First system to call my own, the Game Boy Color, teal, Pokemon Red version, 5 years old. I remember distinctly ripping open the wrapping paper, Santa Claus, teal Game Boy Color, Pokemon Red. It took me hours to find out how to get my character out of my house to kickstart that game. Couldn't get it, probably about a year or two young to start that game, but still thank my parents for getting that Game Boy Color for me. Favorite genre, action RPG, also probably still true. Love me some action RPGs. All right, let's expand this because I'm forewarning you. If I remember correctly, beyond this, you will see R.E. Lewis 2011's top 10 games of all time whenever he wrote this. Keep that in mind. You've been warned. All right, let's scroll up a little bit before we get to that. Other random facts. Favorite Pokemans? Some Pokemon. Totodile, Charmander, Lucario, and Pikachu. I think those Pokemon probably still represent my top few favorites, for sure. I'm not sure if others kind of come off the top of my head at this point, but yeah, we'll stick with those. Favorite movie? Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. Huge fan of Lord of the Rings. I actually got some pop figures here. We've got some Gandalf, some Aragorn. Yeah, big fan of Lord of the Rings. Big fan. Probably still my favorite movie, but some other favorites of mine might be the first Godfather film, Count of Monte Cristo. Goodness gracious. Doing this off the cuff is a little tough, talking about your favorite films. Shawshank Redemption's a classic for sure. Dark Knight. Heath Ledger's legendary performance as the Joker. There's so many different films I could talk about right now, but this is kind of going outside of the scope of this particular video, so we're not going to go there. Favorite Disney movie? The Lion King. Still holds true. I recorded a top 10 Disney movie video many years ago. You can go check that out. I think most of that list probably still stands true today. Favorite superheroes? Wolverine, Spider-Man, Batman, for sure. Eventually, when I do a game room tour, you will see that my comic collection is almost exclusively those 3 superheroes, for sure. All right, hold on. Let's try and... People are already like probably looking like, Rusty, well, I want to get away from the superheroes. I want to talk about those top 10 games down there. Chillax. We're going to get there. Okay, top 10. Let's just go to the top 3. Top 3 games of all time. When I created this list, Kingdom Hearts 1. We already talked about it up there, what it meant to me. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, okay. Resident Evil 4, all 3 great games. If you go to Metacritic, 2 of those games are probably very much at the top of that list. You go to your IGNs of the world, I think Ocarina of Time and Resident Evil 4 will be very high up on their top 100, top 200 games of all time. These 3 games mean very different things to me for very different reasons. I'm not going to go into all those reasons why today, because once we get into these individual collections, we'll start telling stories. Excuse me. Can I take a drink of water real quick? Is that okay? Got my Mickey Mouse glass right here. I don't know how YouTubers record videos nowadays beyond a couple minutes without taking drinks of water. Maybe they do and they just cut every 30 seconds because a lot of stuff is, I don't know, scripted? Who knows? I'm not in the YouTube rhythm. Moving along a little bit more here. Next 3 games. Super Mario 64 absolutely would not be in my top 10 nowadays. I feel like some of this list I built out more to appease other people that may have been visiting my Backloggery than it was a true reflection of my top 10. Has anyone ever done that? Maybe this was more the 18 to 19, 20-year-old Rusty, where I was far more insecure and less confident in my selections, where I felt like I needed to have those true, like, of course, you can't have a top 10 list without Super Metroid or Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy VII. You need to have one of those games on your top 5, right? I love Super Mario 64. I played it to death as a kid. Never beat the game, never got all the stars. It's iconic. It is an absolute N64 classic for sure. Revolutionized 3D games. I'm not denying that, but it would not make my list. I'd probably put something like DK64, Banjo-Kazooie on the list if I was building out a top 10 now, and I had to include a N64 3D platform. Number 5, Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth, an RTS game on the Xbox 360. Love the choice. I respect it. 18-year-old Rusty. And good on you. I'd probably still find a way to include this on my top 10. Pokemon Alpha Sapphire on the 3DS. Of course, a remake of Sapphire and Ruby on the Game Boy Advance, the 3rd generation of Pokemon. Excellent choice. Probably top 3-ish Pokemon games of all time for me, for sure. And yeah, good choice. I don't know if I'd include this on my top 10. Again, breaking this up between childhood versus adulthood life, if you will. It's tough to know if I'd include this, but interesting choice for sure. All right, number 7 here, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Interesting story with this. This was one of those classic examples of a game I had absolutely zero interest in when I first played it, even though my friend at the time was talking it up as being one of the best experiences he's ever played. And I remember getting it from Best Buy once all the DLC had come out on the Xbox 360, hating it, not understanding what the heck the draw was for this game. I hated the first-person clunky mechanics, going into these dungeons, swinging your sword. Hit detection was just awkward and weird, unlike anything I'd ever played before. A couple years later, revisited it, now among one of my favorite games of all time. Visually, I love how it's far more vibrant and colorful than something like Skyrim, which tends to kind of draw in those very dark, dreary grays, if you will, from a world color building perspective. Oblivion, I much prefer. I don't even want Elder Scrolls 6. I just want an Oblivion remake. Number 8, Perfect Dark. Another N64 favorite of mine. Grant Kirkhope composed a incredible cyberpunk stellar soundtrack there. Just terrific stuff. Of course, you could play bots with your buddies, multiplayer. You could play solo if you wanted to. So good. So good. I spent one of my most played N64 games. Absolutely. Absolutely. So good. I wish we could just listen to the soundtrack right now without getting copyright strikes. Smash Bros. Melee. Another game I played an absurd number of hours with my buddies in solo, and still has some of the best maps we've ever seen in Smash Brothers. That's why they made their way to Smash Brothers Ultimate. And that was also the last game that I had Link as my main, because in future Smash Bros. Games, I just thought he controlled a little bit more awkwardly. And it's amazing that this game is still a game that people play competitively today. Wild stuff. I don't think this would make my top 10 today. No. And Star Wars Battlefront 2, another game that's just very nostalgic for me. I loved playing growing up with my buddies. So many sleepovers playing this game till crazy hours in the morning, but definitely would not make my top 10 games of all time today. But interesting nonetheless. What do you say we pop into one of these consoles? And let's also figure out what the first console is that I'm going to debut for this series of videos, right? Because tomorrow, actually, I'm going to be recording the first episode, and I'll be releasing those over an undetermined schedule. All of you will be made aware of that at some point. But let's just start with a console that I'm not going to be starting the series with. Let's start with the PlayStation 2. Revisit some of those comments. We only have 9 games to potentially review. Again, that number will increase. You can see the number of PS2 games back there. But let's start tomorrow with the Nintendo 3DS. Because there's been more recent news about the eShop closing and all of that craziness. Let's revisit my 3DS collection. Let's figure out how much it's grown, how much it's shrunk. I don't know. We'll have to pull the games off the shelf, review them together. I'll show them on the camera. We'll talk about my memories playing them. It's going to be great times. But until then, let's walk through. Let's revisit some PlayStation 2 comments. All right, so this was the state of my PlayStation 2 collection, I guess, 5 years ago. Back in, 4 years ago, technically, in 2018. Enter the Matrix. What a great little game this was. I love my licensed games, as you can already see. 4 games off the top, all licensed games based on movie properties. And Enter the Matrix was one that I remember distinctly. My buddy Scott getting that glossy cover, playing as 2 characters. I had no idea who they were. They were like side characters in Matrix Reloaded or something like that. You know, Niobe and Ghost or something. Let's see what my thoughts were about Enter the Matrix back when I entered or created this entry. Ari Lewis, 2011, 2011, folks. Who could deny that glossy cover? Man. Words of wisdom. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. These first 3 Harry Potter games were particularly interesting because Jeremy Soule composed the soundtracks to them. So if you're familiar with the Elder Scrolls games, I talked about Oblivion just a few moments ago, Morrowind, Skyrim, he composed the soundtracks to these games. So talk about atmosphere, talk about perfectly complementing the experience of wandering around Hogwarts. He made that experience that much better with his compositions for those games. So, Sorcerer's Stone on PS2 in particular is getting a little pricey these days, but we're not going to go there right now. What did I have to say about Prisoner of Azkaban back then? I skipped soccer practice multiple weeks to play this game. It's so true. It's so true. And my mom, oh, bless her, I don't know if I made up excuses or what, but there was at least 2 to 3 weeks in a row where I begged and pleaded to allow me to keep playing Prisoner of Azkaban instead of going to soccer practice. Gosh, come on, Rusty, get it together. Sorcerer's Stone. Let's see what I had to say about this one. Not enough people played these early Harry Potter games. The music perfectly complemented the sense of exploration when wandering around Hogwarts didn't get enough love. So true, which is what I just said. Jeremy Soule composed the soundtracks. Really fun games, kind of like third-person exploration, puzzle solving. You go to your classes, you go on these little adventures. You kind of follow, of course, the storylines of the films. They were good fun. Good licensed games, no doubt. Kingdom Hearts, third playthrough, smiley face. 50 minutes into a standard mode, I'm still in Destiny Islands on my PS2 playthrough. Let's see what I had to say. Favorite game of all time. I'll never forget walking into Scott's basement I mentioned earlier, seeing his brothers playing this game, eventually buying a greatest hits copy for myself at Target. My mom putting time limits on how long I could play after school. She only did this for Kingdom Hearts and Herbs, Sims in the City on GBA. That's a true story, by the way. My mom was great about never limiting my game time because I always made sure to get my homework done. Only 2 games ever got in the way of that with me. Kingdom Hearts, Herbs, Sims in the City on GBA. Really random. I don't know why. Eventually playing on the 15-inch TV in the back of my mom's hair salon after school. Memories are cemented in my mind, as is this game as my favorite of all time. That's a great write-up and perfectly captures my experience playing Kingdom Hearts 1. So good on early Ari Lewis 2011 for putting that together, because it's so true. My mom's a hairstylist. I remember going in the back of her salon and playing Kingdom Hearts. So, on a 15-inch CRT TV while she finished with all of her clients. That's amazing. Couple more games here. We've got Kingdom Hearts 2, NBA Street Volume 2. Be a Legend mode is my comment here for NBA Street Volume 2. We love those EA Sports big titles. Let's see what I had to say about this one. One of the greatest games of the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era, when EA Sports big was a thing. Yeah. NBA Street Volume 2, Volume 3 was pretty good too. I think Volume 3 on the GameCube had Mario and Luigi and some of those characters, but loved those NBA, FIFA, NFL Street games. Miss them. Definitely miss them. 2 more games. War of the Monsters, another favorite of mine growing up. I said, remember playing this on a jam-packed demo disc. Scott and I immediately had to go to Blockbuster and rent a copy. Such a great time. It's amazing how many times I mentioned Scott so far in this video, because he was instrumental, him and his brothers, in introducing me to so many video games I otherwise never would have discovered. So more stories to come with Scott for sure. War of the Monsters, a terrific kind of beat 'em up type of game where you're playing as these Godzilla, Mothra type monsters in these giant cities running across the map. There's all kinds of citizens in the bottom, running around and going crazy. It's a really interesting type of game, worth checking out for sure. And last but not least, we have The Warriors, of course, based on the cult classic 1980s film. And I have the audacity to say my favorite Rockstar game ever. I'd have to go through the list of all Rockstar games. I don't know if that would hold true today, but an interesting quote from early Ari Lewis 2011. The Warriors, if you're not familiar with the film, definitely check it out. It's definitely holds up today, one of my favorites. And it's basically a beat 'em up, but Rockstar ended up publishing this game. So interesting thing to note there. Even the world and the map looks very much like that early GTA 3 Vice City type of stuff. So the Warriors, wow, interesting thoughts so far. So hopefully you get a picture from what we've done so far to what this series is going to be about, right? So it's going to be going through my backlog. It's going to start and kick things off, going through my 3DS collection, clicking into here, reading the thoughts I have for all my 3DS games currently at that point in time in my collection, figuring out, are they still in my collection? If they're not, deleting them. And then adding all of the newer 3DS games that I have purchased since the last time I updated my Backloggery, walking through those and adding comments, telling stories about when I played them, all of those fun things. Hopefully you found this first introductory video to be somewhat entertaining, a little longer than I anticipated it. Hopefully I can edit this down a little bit. But these are really meant to be these conversational type of things where they're almost mini podcast episodes in a sense, where I hope that you can put this up in the background while you're playing a video game, getting some work done, browsing the internet late at night, or maybe you are just trying to find something super chill to listen to before you go to bed. All right. Wherever this video series finds you, I hope it finds you well. Hope you find it entertaining. And maybe over the course of all these stories that I might tell, going through, cataloging, tracking, and updating my game collection on Backloggery, you can find inspiration for a couple of titles that maybe you want to add to your collection. This is not meant to instill the fear of missing out. This is truly just meant to showcase the types of games that I love. And maybe you'll find a couple that you might find some interest in. All right? Thank you so much, everyone. If you're still here, if you've made it to the end of this video, and you are still tuning in to this particular video, thank you for making it this far. Hopefully, you found this to be fun. And stay tuned for future episodes, if you will, and consider sharing this with others. I will have links to the other things that I'm creating in the description below. I will not go on and on. Many of you might already know I record a podcast called Talkie Brothers, also video game related. All of those links will be in the description below. And until next time, I will find you in the next video where I walk you through my 3DS collection, enter it into my Backloggery, and tell you some fun stories about what the 3DS and its collection of games means to me. All right? Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time.